Dreamcatchers, welcome to another day in the Writers' Haven, where writers and filmmakers connect with aspiring writers and filmmakers. Our studio guest is writer Sharon Lucas, the author of Planet, the complete resource guide for authors, book clubs, and literary event planners. She is the founder and president of the Reading Divas Book Club and the organizer of the Black Authors and Readers Rock Weekend. Sharon is a fierce advocate of African American authors and book clubs and is working tirelessly to disavow the myth that people of color don't buy books. Join me in extending a Dreamcatcher welcome to Sharon Lucas. Sharon, I want to start off with, first of all, welcoming you to the Writers' Haven. This is your first time with us.
Thank you.
It will not be the last.
I hope not.
We have quite a bit of literature that we want to discuss with you. But I want to start off with the comment I made about your disavowing that whole myth that actually has been spread. I've heard it twice within the last 2 months about people of color and reading books or finding books about and written by people of color. So I want to start off, before we start talking about Planet, I'd like to start off just talking about that subject in general and your thoughts about it.
Well, in general, people feel that people of color don't read. I think it is a myth. Several years ago, in fact, Pew Research actually ran a study that showed that African American women read more than any other group in the United States. It just isn't true. We read books. I have a couple websites. I am always surprised at the people who still want a book. I'm a Kindle person. But there are people who buy oodles of books, and we are readers. I think that we have to work harder at reading. I think that we have to really introduce it to our children at an early age, but I think that we read.
Yeah, and the reason why I really wanted to talk about this in the context of book clubs, because I know that that's one of the reasons why you started a book club and why you're such an advocate for book clubs. But just talking to a group of students about a month ago at Bowie State University in the creative writing program there, and one of the students there was a junior, and she mentioned that her father told her once, when she told him that she wanted to be an author one day, he told her, well, the fastest way or the cleanest way to hide something from people of color is to put it in a book. And you know, that's something that we've heard kind of jokingly in passing, but it's something that has picked up fire to some degree. And the fact that she repeated it to me, and then she went on to talk about how small the creative writing classes are because a lot of students aren't selecting that practice or that area of education to go into. And so because this is something that you've researched, that you've talked a little bit about in your book, I just wanted to get your take. You know, we're talking about young people that are growing into this society, who are one day will be leaders of this society, and particularly African American students, with this idea of reading and maybe being allergic to the idea of reading.
Well, I would say that I think that's sad. I think it's very sad that an African American father would repeat that to his daughter. I think that as African American parents, we are here to set an example for our children. I will put it that way. And I think that if he doesn't feel, or if he feels that way, then he's not setting a very good example for her. I think it's sad that we're still sharing stereotypes from 50 years ago. I think that that was something that people laughed about back then, but I don't think it's funny anymore. For a number of reasons. They don't teach cursive writing in school anymore. They don't teach this, they don't teach that in school. If we're not teaching our children, my mother had a 7th grade education. and she read everything. I can remember as a kid growing up, if I didn't have anything else to do and I tell her I was bored, she'd tell me to get the newspaper and read it to her. I have three brothers and two sisters. We all read. My uncles read. And I think it's what you see what you do, or you do what you see your parents do kind of thing. And I know that my husband isn't a great reader, but he can read. Right. That's really the big thing. We need to make sure that our children are reading. I make my grandchildren read to me so that I know they are reading. Everybody won't have a love for it, but certainly you can't get along in the world if you can't read.
Right, and I often wonder along those lines whether or not it's a generational perspective on not necessarily books. As authors, we enjoy reading and writing, and we of course would like for other people to read our work. Yeah. But it's bigger than that. I mean, it's through reading that we learn so much about other cultures, that we learn about relationships, that anything that you want to know more information about, reading about it, whether it's on the internet, finding some blog or information in general, or just literature that someone had written long ago that still applies today.
That's true.
So it's a movement, I think, to some degree, of young people who are moving away from literature mainstream as we know it, and focusing more on smaller contexts like the podcasts that you see. I think there was a study that was done by TV1, although they have not made it public, but I heard about it. They had brought some millennials in and just asked them questions about programming, about those kinds of activities that they enjoy engaging in, and of course using devices was amongst the higher ranking. And then it came to, well, what is it that you're looking at? What is it that you're reading or not reading? And it was revealed through this study that anything with a very short time frame, whether it's listening to an audiobook or listening to a podcast or reading something, it had to be something that immediately grabbed their attention for a short period of time. And then they move on to the next item. And so where does literature fall into place?
Well, I don't think we're going to capture everybody. I think that's the first thing, is that we're just not going to, everybody's not going to buy into how we feel about literature. But I think that what really I like right now is that you're seeing so many young authors. You're seeing authors 9, 10, 11, 15, in their early 20s. Maybe we didn't do such a good job with the millennials, but I see these kids coming up now are doing great things when it comes to actually writing their own books and whatever. So you just have to keep trying.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the young adult genre is one that has really gotten a big boost.
That and children's. I think everybody's, because I know some authors who have been writing for years that have now are writing children's books. They've stopped writing the genre they were writing in, and they're now writing children's books. But hopefully, these young people who are writing and who are producing, and I interviewed a couple on Facebook who have written their own books. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Planet.
All right.
And the genesis for the book. What inspired it?
What inspired it? Well, first of all, I started a book club. And that was back when Oprah was big. And I think everybody was starting book clubs. And it was a really wonderful thing. And that book club I founded in August of 1998. We still meet. In fact, we just met on Sunday. And then we began, after 10 years, we had an event to celebrate being together 10 years. And I loved bringing the authors together. I loved the whole event kind of thing. But as I traveled around and saw other people doing similar things, it was like it was kind of helter-skelter. And I thought, this is an opportunity to put everything together in one book that will show people how to start a book club, to keep the book club together. And then if you want to celebrate and bring authors in, how to plan a good literary event. So that's where Planet came from.
Well, you know what? Your writing is so fluid. It was such an easy read. And I mean that with all praises, because, you know, many times, and I'm sure that you know this, you'll read kind of a self-help book or a how-to book, and the mechanics of it, sometimes as a reader, you kind of get bogged down into it. But this was a really easy read. It was very compelling in terms of how to set up an event, how to set up a book club. And it was just very true to form. It wasn't a lot of bells and whistles, but there's a lot that you can do in planning it, and you brought that out in the book as well. So I want to talk a little bit about just your writing ability in general. Where have you been writing for years, or was this?
I've always had positions that required me to write. Let me put it that way. And I think with Planet, the one thing that I want to stop and say about that particular book is that when you're going to write something like that, from my perspective, you have to be willing to give it all. If you're going to have the little trade secrets that you're not willing to share with others, then you might as well not write. So I think that that's possibly what you picked up from the book, was that there was nothing that I did, that I do, that I felt I had to hold it. I wanted to share all of that. And you have to get to that point. I just like to write. For 20 years, I was a district manager with Avon, which meant that I was writing marketing, and I was, you know, writing newsletters for my representatives and whatever. It's just something that I like to do, and it comes kind of naturally.
Yeah, that was very, very evident in the writing. Would you say that there's writers that influence your writing?
No. And I know that sounds strange, but I think that you have to write for yourself. I think that there are writers, Victoria Christopher Murray, who inspires me to keep going on, who inspire me to want to share with other people. But I would never tell you that I would want to sit down and write what Victoria writes.
Because it's a different genre.
It's a different genre, but not even at that, because she is after me every time we talk. Sharon, when are you going to write that book? Sharon, I know if you could write Planet, you know you have a book in you. I don't know that I do. That was why I wrote the short story, to kind of get her to be quiet. And then she says, okay, so you did it, now you can write a longer book. And I really haven't come to that conclusion, because right now I have learned so much since I wrote Planet that I'm now in the process of updating and rewriting it.
Okay, in terms of, in what way?
In what way? Things have just changed. Information has changed. How we do things change. And even though that book is only a couple years old, there's just so much more that can be said now. And so I'm trying to say it.
Okay. And so you're also infiltrating more of the social media aspect of book clubs. And let's talk about the, before we go into the X-Files, I also want to talk about the Writers' Conference that you started. What year was that?
2008 was our first conference.
Okay.
And it started out with, let's just celebrate our 10th anniversary. And then the next year I thought, let's do it again, and let's do it again. And then I think by the 5th year I said, let's make this a 2-day conference. And we started having workshops and whatever. And it's just grown into a very good event.
So this was your brainchild.
Yes.
And there was a 10-year celebration that was the kickoff?
Was the kickoff. And we never thought when we did that 10-year that we would do it again. But it was so well received, and you really saw how much people enjoyed meeting the authors. Because we read, but sometimes we'd like to touch them and get to know them and know a little bit more about them. Yeah, the authors. And so social media has changed a lot of that because they are now so accessible to readers. Right. On Facebook and Twitter and whatever. But still, they like to see them and talk to them and get those books autographed and whatever. And it's just been a very good experience.
And so that conference is usually held in October?
In October.
In Bowie, Maryland?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So let's talk about the Ex Chronicles, one of your other books. You just mentioned it a second ago. So there were how many authors that were part of this? 20 authors. Yes. Short stories.
Yes.
And what was the theme for these?
It had to be about an ex.
Okay.
You know, and if you read it, the stories are all over the place, but it all had something to do about an ex. And I sat down one evening and said, I think I can do this. And the next morning, I sent it to Victoria, and the rest is history.
So I know our dream catchers are going to want to know a lot more behind the story of how you wrote it. Are you saying that the idea was just presented to you, and in one day, one night, you penned it?
Well, actually, I think not Victoria, but Rashonda had gone out with a call. We're putting out this anthology. It has to be about exes. Submit it. And I thought about it that afternoon. I'm retired, okay. I thought about it that afternoon, and I sat down that evening, and I wrote it, and I thought, this is it, and I said it. And that was it.
And by Rashonda, you're talking about
Rashonda Tate Billingsley,
okay,
yes.
Okay.
If she and Victoria are together in Brown, they own Brown Girls Publishing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And so going back to just your writing style specifically in this book and how you went about writing this short story.
Okay.
And I know it took a day, and I know there are some dream catchers out there saying, whoa, that's incredible. But it's possible. You know, I've even seen books out in mainstream about write a book in 15 days, write a suspense thriller in 5 days. So it is possible to do it.
And a short story shouldn't take that long, I don't think.
So did you outline it? What was your process?
I sat down and I thought about it, and I put a few things down about where I wanted it to start and where it would end, and then I just filled it in.
Okay.
And I mean,
ladies and gentlemen, it was that simple.
It really was. I don't know that writing a full-length novel will be quite that easy, but certainly a short story, it just worked out.
Okay. Now, I'm sure there are people who are going to ask themselves and want to know, is this true to form? Is this one of Sharon's experiences? And that's why it was so easy to write?
It was not about me.
So I just want to talk about that generally because, you know, one of the questions that I get from writers who are, you know, in their infancy in their writing, they want to know how much of me and my personal experiences are in my writings. And, you know, for me, and I think I've heard this with other authors, because we birth these children, these characters from us, they are a part of us, and it may be someone we know, it may be an experience that we had as a kid or maybe even last year. Of course, names have changed to protect the innocent, but there is a piece of us that's always a part of what we write. Okay. Even if it's the littlest part of it. And I'm not asking you to reveal whether that's true or not with the Ex Chronicles, but what the most important point that I want to make, though, for our dream catchers that are watching, is that when they're writing, you know, when you're writing from your soul, don't be afraid to, quote unquote, expose something that you may have experienced or have, and experiencing meaning not just you personally, but experienced it through someone else, and bring that into, because I think there's some authenticity that occurs in that moment of bringing that energy into your writing, into your creativity. I
read on Facebook today, someone posted, every author's first book is autobiographical.
Okay.
And she's a writer, she's an editor, I respect her, and maybe that is true, but this just had nothing to do with me. It was just something that popped in my head, and I laugh because, to be very, very honest, there are so many things I'd like to write about them, but I don't think I can disguise them enough. I would love to write a book that just, with anything in it I want it, but I am just so afraid that I would hurt people's feelings. Maybe I shouldn't be that way, but I'm always thinking about, oh my goodness, that is such a good story, but do you really think if I wrote it, she would know it was her? So maybe I'll get over that hurdle at some point.
Yeah, and I know that, or at least I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of other writers out there that feel the same way that you do in terms of, you know, how much do you reveal. And even when you change the names, the people that are in your circle are going to know if you're talking about them. I mean, I'll tell you, for my novel, Lies and Fairy Tales, there are 3 people who are going to read that, and they're going to know for sure it's them.
Who they are.
Yes, yes, yes. One of them is the serial killer. Now, that's not to say this person goes around and kills people, but that I know of. But the characteristics of that person when they're not, you know, slicing somebody up, is definitely, she's going to know
who she is.
She's going to know who she is.
Have you ever met Mary Monroe?
No.
Mary is a wonderful person, and just to sit and listen to her, but she tells you when she runs out of ideas, she calls her cousin in Mississippi and just lets her talk and gossip about everybody in town. And by the time she's finished, she has some thoughts about the next book. So.
Wow. Well, are there any lasting thoughts that you want to share with our dream catchers who are aspiring to be in a place of being published and at a literary plateau such as where you are?
Well, I will say I didn't start this until after I retired. I turned 70 on the 6th of June, and I'm enjoying myself. So I would just say, regardless of how old you are, if it's your dream, catch it.
Well said, well said. And on that note, dream catchers, I want to thank you for tuning in. And to get more information about author Sharon Lucas, you can go to her website at www.sharonrlucas.com. Thanks for joining us today, and catch fire on purpose.
What are you, superheroes?
Just 4 brothers who hate bullies and love this city.
Whoa!
Gear up, guys.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Puedes encontrar aventuras en cualquier parte, pero el mejor lugar para iniciar la búsqueda está en el bosque.
I spied something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Sal a descubrir animales increíbles, hermosas plantas y árboles que se unen para crear una aventura inolvidable.
Wow.
Así que ven con tus seres queridos.
Don't
even.
A explorar un mundo de posibilidades.
Come on, this way.
Visita descubreelbosque.org para encontrar el bosque o parque más cercano.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. Gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet. Green hat, red hat, oops. Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants, oops.
The color in my garden keeps the pink in my cheeks. I was very independent and thought I could take care of myself. I fell and I had to have Meals on Wheels. They're my savior. My name is Lola Silvestri. America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to theshelterpetproject.org and meet a few who are in a shelter near you. Harlow, oh, she's one great listener who loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to theshelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.